Disney announced that they had bought Marvel, comic book fans went nuts with speculation, most of it negative. The general opinion was that it was a terrible thing and that Marvel would be ruined. Then, Disney made the Avengers and proved everybody wrong. Seeing that movie opening weekend in 3D with a packed house who were all as excited to see it as I was, I imagine that must have been what it was like when people saw Star Wars for the first time. It was lightning in a bottle. Not surprisingly, the sequel has gotten just as good of a reception, so obviously Disney knows what they're doing with this franchise. But is it as good a film as its predecessor? Well, that depends on how you look at it. Picking up an unspecified amount of time after the previous film, the story begins with the team tracking down Baron von Strucker, who we'd previously seen in the post-credits scene of The Winter Soldier. During the battle, we get our first real look at the twins, Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch, who in the comics are actually Magneto's kids, but for legal reasons they can't mention that in these films. Anyway, they successfully managed to retrieve Loki's staff from the first film, and upon returning to Stark Tower in New York, Tony and Bruce Banner use the magic stone inside it to attempt to create a new kind of AI so that Tony can retire from being Iron Man without feeling like he's being selfish for doing so. Needless to say, this plan goes horribly, horribly wrong. I don't want to give too much of the plot away, so I'll leave it there. What struck me the most about this film is how little exposition there is. The beginning provides no setup of any kind and just throws you into the plot with only vague references to previous events. Realistically, I always knew we'd get to this point eventually, but it's still a little jarring that they expect the audience to have seen every previous film in the series and not just the Avengers. If, like me, you have seen every other film, you'll be able to follow it just fine. But if you only saw the Avengers and somehow missed the rest, I'm sorry to say you'll probably be a little lost. I honestly don't know how I feel about that. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't know. It is what it is. The other thing that really struck me was that whereas the previous Avengers film felt like the finale to everything that had come before, with Iron Man 3 being a good epilogue to the whole thing, Age of Ultron really comes off as just one more chapter in an ongoing plot. It doesn't really resolve any previous storylines, but instead spends a good chunk of its runtime setting things up for the next batch of films without really being something that could stand on its own. Once again, I don't know how I feel about that, but it is what it is. All that said, the actual content of the film is spectacularly well done. If you're a Marvel fan, you'll be in heaven with all the debuts of new characters as well as references to things that comic book fans will get but non-readers probably won't. The action scenes, especially the extended one in the third act, are amazing, and you really have to see it on the big screen to get the full effect. The one thing I was looking forward to the most with this movie was the on-screen debut of the Vision, and I'm happy to report that they nailed him perfectly. He's probably my second favorite movieverse character now behind Captain America, and that alone makes me excited for future films. If you remember the Loki vs. Hulk moment from the first film and how awesome and funny that was, there are a couple of moments like that in this film, but I'm not going to spoil them. So what grade would I give this? It depends. If I were ranking it as a standalone film, not connected to anything other than the Avengers, I'd have to give it 3.5 stars out of 5. It is a worthy sequel, and there's a lot of great stuff in it, but it just doesn't have the same epic feeling as the first one. There's too much setup for the future and not enough of its own story. On the other hand, if I were ranking it as the 11th film in an ongoing series with no planned ending, which is what it is, I'd give it 4.5 stars. There is a lot here for fans of the franchise to digest, and all that setup serves its purpose very, very well. If you've been paying attention to what films Disney has planned, the next batch is going to be seriously cool, and Age of Ultron is a practically perfect prologue. It's unfortunate that they're starting to lock out more casual fans, but for the hardcore followers, the next few years are going to be awesome. Until next time, true believers,